guys, it's Steph at Allen Acres, and today I'm finishing out my 3-part series videos about our trip to Montana.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I am a mom of 7 and I homeschool. We live on a small 5-acre homestead in a tiny Texas town where we pick farm fresh eggs, milk our goats, and make as much food from scratch as we can. We love spending lots of time outside, learning new ways to live a healthy life, and enjoying all the good things God has given us. Here I'll share about parenting, homeschooling, homesteading, family favorite recipes, and testimonies of God's faithfulness. If you enjoy a tight-knit family, real life moments, and the pursuit of a joy-filled life, you're in the right place. I hope you'll join me on my journey to a happy, healthy home life.
I just wanted to share a little bit of our experience and maybe things that I would do the same and things that I would do different, kind of like a pro-con list of the way we chose to travel. For those of you who are new to my channel, this is my 3rd video. Our family took a 2-week trip up to Montana across country, and I shared first like our packing and prepping, and then I shared our trip itself. And today I'm rounding it out by sharing about the pros and cons. To start off, I just want to give a little bit of a background. We chose to travel in a renovated 37-foot schoolie. For those of you that don't know, a schoolie is a bus that someone has converted into an RV basically. Now, the thing that's different about a schoolie is that a traditional RV or travel trailer generally will have like slide outs, which will allow you to accommodate more space once you have stopped and you're parked somewhere. A schoolie, what you see is what you get. So you don't have slide outs or anything like that. The bus we were in was 37 feet long. It belongs to some friends of ours. It's really, really cute. It's a vintage, I think it's like, it's a 1976 Bluebird bus. It's adorable, and they made it so cute on the inside, and we really were so grateful to get to take it. But the reason we chose to take it was really not just skin deep. I know that one day I will share more fully the testimony of what God has done in our lives in the last 1.5 years. But my husband and I, we have been believers our whole lives. But last year in the spring, my husband was baptized in the Spirit, and he began having visions and dreams. And one of the visions that he received, and we are going to be in ministry one day in some capacity. And so another dream or vision that he had was that our family was going to take this particular trip, and it was going to be in this bus. So our friends have owned this bus for a few years now, and when my husband had this vision, our family took this particular bus. Now, we don't know exactly why. We think maybe we'll know that sometime down the road. The bus got a lot of attention on the drive. A lot of people were very interested in it. You know, it's kind of a trend right now, and to redo buses and stuff, and to do schoolies. And so a lot of people asked us questions about it and were very interested in it, and they thought it was really neat. So we don't know if, you know, us driving that bus and it catching someone's eye is gonna have a meaning sometime in the future. We just knew that when we took this trip, we were supposed to take this bus. And so we did. And our friends were extremely gracious in allowing us to do that. We chose to take it for that reason. So I'm sharing this pro and con list with you, not like I would have done something different this time necessarily with the bus, because we would have taken the bus 100 times over because it was a matter of obedience for us. But if I were to do the trip again, I may do it differently. So with all that being said, let me give you a quick list of what worked and what didn't. Okay, to start off, I found that different RV parks were more accommodating and less accommodating. They're also not all created equal. Now, many of you that have traveled before, you may already know this, but we found that price range didn't even necessarily dictate whether or not a RV park was really worth staying in. For example, some of the least expensive opportunities we had to stay were some of the best. On average, I would say we spent anywhere from $30 to $80 a night at the RV parks. There was one place in particular that we stayed in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It was actually a very last minute decision because of a blowout situation that we had. We had to make some last minute accommodations. And may I just tell you that it was the most expensive place that we stayed, and it was the nastiest. The bathrooms were I would say barely clean. The water hookup would smelt so strongly of sewage we didn't even use it, and it was just not, and it was very run down. But then we stayed in some places that were only $50 a night, and their accommodations were amazing. The place we stayed in Montana, it was called Beargrass RV and Lodge, and I can't say enough good things. We really had a great experience. The laundry area was so clean and so, easy to use. The showers were really clean. We had hot water. The whole entire situation was just A+ for us. And several of the other places that we stayed at a place in Amarillo called, I think it was called Big Texan Ranch. Wonderful, great accommodations. We stayed somewhere in Lubbock that was actually an RV resort,
which was also last minute because of the blowout that we had. Our reservations got pushed back a whole night.
and it was also wonderful. There was a pool, there was a shower house that was really nice, and so it was just great. When you're booking RV camps, just be really mindful of the reviews that you read. Take people's reviews pretty seriously. Use discernment as well. Think about, if you're traveling with children, notice what they say on their websites. I noticed that there was one particular place that was very specific about how child-friendly it was. And that was actually one of the reasons that we chose to stay there. But there were several. The wording about children was really interesting. Like, you must control your children at all times. Just tell, like, okay, this is probably not the best place to go with 7 kids. Also, just consider that just because a place is not super expensive or because you don't have hookups, that it's automatically going to be a super laid back environment. We stayed at a place in Grand Tetons.
It was called Coulter Bay, and we had no hookups, no water, no electricity, no sewage. And we actually paid the same $50 rate here that we paid at several other locations, like the one in Montana, with much, much better accommodations. However, we did pick a specific location that said it allowed generators from morning hours until evening hours, like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And we were really planning on using this as an opportunity to heat the bus in the morning when it was really cold, and because it got down into like the 30s, and to also try to keep the fridge cold during the day because we had food in there. But shortly after getting there, they came and told us that our generator was too loud and we were not allowed to use it.
So we paid $50 to literally park somewhere with no hookups, no ability to use a generator. Now, I will say there was a shower and laundry situation for us to use. We literally had to walk a mile to get to it, which maybe it would really bother some people. For us, we kind of looked at it as an adventure. But if you consider like what we were paying and what we got, I just felt like it was kind of a broke deal.
It was nice that we had some trailheads right off of where we were staying that allowed us to go on some hikes in the Grand Tetons, and also to be able to see Jackson Lake within a really reasonable walking distance.
That was a positive. But overall, I felt like for the same price we paid at the place in Montana, with all the accommodations that we had, it just was overall, it just felt like we kind of got gypped. So when you're looking for RV places, consider what their website says about children. Consider the fact that not everywhere is the same just based on a price range, and just use your best judgment and your discernment. And of course, you can even pray about it and just ask God to give you wisdom about the best places to stay, because I really think where you're staying, I don't want to say it can make or break your trip, but it can really affect your overall attitude and just your quality of time spent wherever it is that you're going. The next thing I wanted to talk about was food. So I mentioned before that I had, and y'all saw if you watched my video about prepping and packing, that I made this big, huge tub full of snacks, and I was letting my kids pick out their snacks each day, and that they were responsible for their own food. I would love to report that that actually worked out really, really great. Everyone down to the 4-year-old was able to get what they wanted or needed out of the bin every single day, including us. And it made packing snacks very simple, very easy. The tub was big enough that multiple children could bend over it at one time, and it was all there in one place. I really, really liked that. The only thing I withheld from the bin was anything that I didn't want them to have a lot of or that maybe was special. So we don't really buy gummy bears, but I had bought a box of organic gummy bears and I had put them in a separate drawer, and everyone was allowed one package of those every day, and I rationed them out as such. But everything else was pretty much a free-for-all. In a schoolie, depending on how it's been renovated, you may or may not have the full accommodation that you would have in an RV. In this particular schoolie that we were in, the kitchen was great, but it did not have a traditional stove or oven. Cooking for 9 people, 4 of which eat like adults, because it was my husband and I, 2 teenager or adult-sized children, and 5 little ones, you have to cook a lot of food.
I know some people's kids don't eat a lot of food, but our kids do, and we have to cook a lot of food at meal times.
So I had to get extremely creative with this situation. We also did not have the ability to run electric while we were driving. So I couldn't be cooking things while we were driving, like, oh, I'll just plug in this crock pot and it'll be ready when we get wherever we're going. No, I had to really think ahead and I had to really plan ahead. So this was a little bit difficult. It was something that I had to really just think about, plan ahead, and work through. Because of the blowout situations that we had and the extra time we ended up spending on the road, we did eat out 2 times additionally than what we were planning. We had planned to eat out a couple of times. One was for my son's birthday, and the others were for specific reasons that we had kind of planned out. So we did end up having to eat out 2 extra times, which was not in our plans or in our budget, but we had to roll with the punches. It's really, when you're thinking about RV traveling, if you're trying to save money on food, just really thinking ahead about what you can make quickly or what you can make easily. I did not want to be spending tons and tons of time cooking in the kitchen. I just didn't.
I wanted to be outside, enjoying the scenery and doing all the things that my family was doing and enjoying it right along with them.
Now, of course, as the mom, that's not always going to happen because you do have to keep things running, but I wanted to free myself up as much as possible. So if it did not get cooked in an Instant Pot and a crock pot, we didn't need it. There were 2 occasions where we used the little 2-burner stove and used a small pot to make some rice. That's pretty much the only thing I could make enough of on that little 2-burner stove for our whole family. So I had cooked some rice on it to go with some chili one night, and then we re-warmed up some leftover soup another night. Other than that, it was the crock pot or the Instant Pot. I made breakfast casseroles in it. I made soups in it. I made barbecue chicken. I made baked potatoes in them. Don't know if you've ever tried baked potatoes in the Instant Pot. Amazingly quick and so easy. So anyways, just considering that. We kept our lunch situation very simple. We ate sandwiches every single day. I don't normally buy store-bought bread, but I was buying the Dave's Killer organic bread. We ate that on sandwiches every single day, and it made it really simple. Mornings that we were traveling, we were eating something that didn't require cooking, like cereal and milk or individually packaged yogurts. This worked great. I was able to serve everyone breakfast, including my husband that was driving, very simply and very quickly. Everything was disposable, so after we were done, we put it in the trash. There was no cook, there was no cleanup, so eating on the go was really no big deal in that regard. The other thing I wanted to share was the clothes situation. I know that I shared, I felt like I was kind of packing a little bit too much. Maybe I was packing not enough. It was really hard to know because we were visiting multiple climates over a 2-week period, and I wanted to be prepared.
The last thing I wanted was for us to be cold and to not have enough clothes, or for us to be hot and only have 1 or 2 pairs of shorts and not have options to keep ourselves cool in the warm weather.
We all wore our heavy jacket at some point. My kids even wore beanies at one point. We all needed the really warm pajamas and sweatpants on the 2 nights we were in Wyoming with no hookups. We all needed the pants and the jeans and the long sleeve shirts and button down flannels for layering and the hoodies. The shoes we took got worn. Everything really, for the most part, got worn. My husband truly is the only exception.
And that's mostly because he really prefers to wear shorts when it's cold.
So he wore hiking pants a couple of days, but outside of that, he was in shorts. And so some of the warmer clothes that he ended up packing just didn't get used, but that was okay. Also, another thing I wanted to share was my little what to do list. I had shared that I was really going to try to capitalize on the time we were spending traveling with hopefully getting some reading in and maybe some educational things. And so I had like a little loop schedule, and it sounded really good. I was gonna require them to play with either like Legos or dinosaurs at some point, and do some phonics and math at some point, maybe do some art at some point, play a game, read a book, and then they could have screen time. Well, let me just tell you that all went out the window. I did not anticipate how loud this vintage Bluebird bus would actually be. So where we rode majority of the time was really loud. And so reading was almost impossible. In fact, I think I read one book to my 4-year-old and he was like, Mommy, why are you yelling at me? And I was like, I'm just trying to let you hear what I'm saying, because it was so loud. I had to almost yell for him to be able to hear me. And I was sitting right next to him. So reading pretty much went out the window. Also, with all the extra movement that we felt in the bus, some of my kids are more prone to motion sickness. So trying to read themselves was also really difficult. And so I honestly just didn't stress over it. There were a couple of days where I was like, okay, you need to do something other than be on the screen, because there was a couple days where they seemed a little bit more like in wanting the screen time. But honestly, I really have to say that I think having the freedom to move around if you needed to, and also be able to look out so many windows, because the bus has a lot of windows, really, really helped. My kids had never seen mountains before. And pretty much once we got out of Texas, that's all we saw was mountains. Our views were beautiful.
I would say 80% of the time, most of my kids, with the exception of the baby, spent their time traveling just looking out the window.
And just being excited, because it was just something they had never seen before. So honestly, the screen situation really wasn't that bad. They did use screens some while we were driving, but really, honestly, not too terribly much. The instances where we got really, really hot because we had no AC and we were getting back into Texas, they did tend to want to be on the screens more to like distract themselves from how hot they were, which I totally understood. But overall, I would say our amount of screen time versus our amount of traveling time was really not too bad. My husband and I actually did the math, and it was 29 hours to get to Montana. That's with no stops for gas or bathrooms or food or anything in a car. So you add on the fact that we stopped multiple times. Obviously, we had to fill up the bus with gas every so often. And we're in a bus. A bus doesn't go as fast as a car does, especially when you're going up a mountain. Let me just tell you, it does not go that fast. We're talking like 30 miles an hour going up a mountain, okay? So, we were just enjoying it, going with it. We ended up being in the bus 40 hours of travel time each way. I think, considering we were in the bus traveling for the same number of hours that most people work in a week, my kids did amazing. I really cannot say enough good things. I was honestly surprised, because we've never done anything like this before, but they did so good. The only person that had a hard time was the baby. He had a tough time, but he survived, and we made it, and we got really creative, and we made it work. I had mentioned that I was going to require all of my children to carry their own food and water in their backpacks for anything that we did and any hike that we went to. And I was a little nervous about this, just because you just never know. Some kids, how your own children are. You have some kids that are very go with the flow, and you have some kids that are a little temperamental and maybe sometimes wake up and you don't know what you're going to get. Kind of like a box of chocolates. And so I really didn't know how some of my children would do with this idea of being responsible for their own backpack with their own food and water at all times. But let me just tell you, it worked out great. Everybody had their own backpack, which was cool. Everybody liked having their own hiking backpack. I made sure they were small and compact with a lot of storage compartments, so nobody was being required to carry this big, huge backpack full of stuff except me. And so it really, I think that helped a lot. So everybody's backpack was literally just big enough to carry their water bottle and their food. So it wasn't like super heavy or super big and bulky. And I think that was really a positive in this direction. Everyone down to the 4-year-old carried their own food. Now, if I let people pick, they could either make a peanut butter and jelly or a meat and cheese sandwich each day. If they made a meat and cheese sandwich, I did put all the meat and cheese sandwiches in one lunch kit and carried it with a cool pack in my backpack. So if they had a meat and cheese sandwich, I did carry it for them. But outside of that, they carried their own chips. They carried their own fruit, if we had fruit, and they carried all their own snacks, which was generally 3 to 5 snacks, depending on what we were going to be doing that day, and their own stainless steel water bottle. This was really, really convenient. For the days we were hiking, obviously, because if we were hiking and they wanted a snack, all they had to do was pull off their own backpack, get their own snack, and keep walking. This was wonderful. I kept a gallon-sized Ziploc in my backpack for all the trash to make sure we weren't leaving anything behind, and that worked out really great. It was also really nice on the days when we weren't necessarily hiking. There were a couple of times we would drive somewhere to go see something, and then we might decide, hey, we want to pull off to this park to go to lunch. And it was nice because we already had our lunches with us. We didn't have to stop to get food anywhere. and everybody had what they needed. And they could eat what they wanted, put it back in their bag, and go on about their business. Or if we were in the car and somebody was hungry, they just pulled out their backpack, got themselves a snack, and kept going down the road. It was not requiring me to stop every time a little person needed food or water, because they had their own stuff and they were responsible for their own stuff. And it required some responsibility and ownership on everybody's part, and it worked out great. I also didn't have to worry about hearing, I don't like that snack, that's not what I wanted, because they packed their own snacks. So if all that they had left in their bag was something that they claimed they didn't like, the responsibility was on them, not me. Overall, I would say my kids did amazing with hiking and carrying their own stuff. They were so resilient. It was so amazing to watch. The teamwork that they had, the encouraging words that they had to share with each other when they were struggling was just so sweet. Lastly, I want to say this, and I hope it doesn't sound cheesy, but I mean it with all sincerity. Probably the most important takeaway I took from this trip was attitudes. When you are in a small space like that with your family, and I really don't think it matters if you have a small family, if you're a family of 4, or you're a family of 9 like us, or maybe even more than that, your attitude has so much to do with the quality of trip that you have. If every time something happens, you're huffing and puffing and getting upset and having no patience, you're probably going to be pretty miserable. It's going to rub off on your kids, and then everybody's going to be miserable, and everyone's going to be arguing and fighting, and everyone's going to have a bad attitude, and everyone's going to be negative, and so the whole trip is going to feel negative. But if when something came our way that we didn't really plan for, if we just kind of stayed positive, we tried to speak life over the situation and just make the most of it, it really helped it not feel so frustrating. We just tried to stay positive. And let me tell you, when you're traveling for 40 hours in a bus one way with 7 children, there's a lot of opportunities to stay positive. And I'm not telling you that we were perfect. There were a few moments that my very sweet and introverted husband really just needed a minute to like cool down, because it was a lot. If you are an introvert, those kinds of situations can be exponentially more stressful for you. And so I really just had to be mindful of that and just say like, okay, how about you hang out in the bus and me and the kids are going to go do whatever. Now, we didn't have the freedom to do that a lot, especially if we were actually traveling, but we tried to just be mindful of each other's needs, and that really helped as well. I think this is also a great opportunity to highlight a healthy balance in marriage. If you have one spouse that tends to do everything and you're on a trip like this, that could also, I could see, could be really, really stressful. So I think this is a great situation where it really takes a lot of teamwork and team effort. Generally at home, I do 98% of all the laundry, but on this trip, he actually helped with the laundry a lot. There were several times where he had gone to the laundry room because there was no one there and he could be alone, and he would read his Bible and do the laundry for me. And that was really a help to me, but ultimately a help to him because he got to get away. So having that teamwork effort within your marriage, but also within your family itself, is really important. I think that this can really highlight some strengths and weaknesses in your family as you go. It definitely did for us. Definitely not saying ours was perfect or that like we had rainbows surrounding our family the whole time. We had moments for sure, but overall it was a lot of fun. If I could do it again, now that we've been obedient and taking the bus, I do think that I would like to entertain the idea of flying. My kids have never flown before. I have never flown with a child, so I don't know what that's like. But I do know that by the time we spent money on the 3 tires that blew out and the extra night we had to stay and the extra eating out, I think we probably would have spent the same amount of money if we had flown. And I figure that's a little less time travel and less time you have to take off work and all that. So I feel like it would probably kind of work itself out. So don't know if we'll get to do this trip again, but if we were to do this trip again, I'm just saying like hypothetically, I think I would probably at least entertain the idea of flying. I have heard some horror stories about flying with kids, so, you know, I guess it's really just kind of a toss-up, but I would not trade this trip for a different way of doing it. I'm so glad we did what we did. It was so much fun. My kids were excited about it. They had so much fun. It brought out the best in some of us and helped some of us work on certain character issues. And overall, it was just a really good experience for our family. And I would not go back and change anything that we did. It was really, really great. I loved getting to like have everything we needed like at all times, you know, like as we're traveling, the diapers and wipes were always close by and the snacks were always close by. I wasn't having to like go through multiple bags to find what we needed. It was just always there. That was really a plus. Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up for my pros and cons and things I wanted to share about our experience with the trip. I hope that you've enjoyed this little 3-part series about our trip to Montana. I know that I did, and I'm so glad that our family has these memories to share for a lifetime to come. If you have been on a trip in an RV with your family and you have any recommendations or tricks or tips that you would like to share, please leave them down in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. Here coming up, I'm going to be trying to share some new content with you. I actually had something recorded before our trip that I'm finally going to get to share with you next week, hopefully. And I have some things that I've been working on around our house and our homestead that I'm excited to share with you in the weeks ahead. So stay tuned. Also, if you have anything that you would like to see in particularly in my videos in the weeks and months to come, please let me know. If you have not already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I try to get out a new video every week on all things related to a happy, healthy home life.